Hello and welcome to the Facial Channel. Today I have some really nice, lovely ladies, really important ladies with me. Sharon Wheeler and Jenny Knossen from the Netherlands.
You see, the people that started Esalen were Stanford University students, undergraduates. And Stanford's undergraduate program is a miracle of wonder. And yes, you know, when you think about having a session with Dr. Rolf, you knew it was going to be extremely, exquisitely painful. However, it's not the kind of pain that you get from having your tissue damaged.
And then you found out something interesting in the 70s. And then you found out something interesting in the 70s.
Yeah, in the 70s, we started, Hector and I moved away from Esalen because we couldn't find a decent school for two kids he had that I was raising. They were not my children, but they were his. And we tried to get them into a decent school in Big Sur, but you had to bribe the superintendent with a television, and we didn't know that. So we got stuck with the other school, which was awful. So I homeschooled them for a year, but homeschooling's not me. I'm not that good at it. So I decided we had to get a school for the kids, and there weren't any schools in Big Sur. There was nothing. Esalen didn't have its gazebo school because Dick Price, the founder and director of Esalen, didn't have a kid. So when he got a kid, they got a school, but we had kids and no school. So we moved into Carmel, Monterey, and set up a medical practice. And we bought into a building before it was built. I worked with the architect to design the suite that we had. We had windows that opened, nobody else did. Screens on the windows that open, you get fresh air through there. We did silencing for the walls. I made the place so silent. So you go into a doctor's office and you can hear the doctor talking to the patient in the next room. You couldn't do that in my place, man. No, you couldn't hear them, so it was private. I had to put intercoms into the rooms for people to call to me because I couldn't hear them. Help, I'm falling off the couch. Nope. It's like, I didn't hear because it was so silent. So we had all this, we had natural wool rugs and all kinds of stuff. It was all natural. I mean, people would laugh, but they didn't know about full spectrum lighting back then. And we had full spectrum lighting. We did this whole business. It was a very nice office that I designed with the architect. And then he was practicing, and we had one room that I made big enough to do Rolfing in, because the Rolfing table's big. So that was our Rolfing room, and I would Rolf and do structural integration sessions after we did our medical stuff. And for the first year, I ran everything. I was the receptionist, I did the taxes, I did everything, absolutely everything. Kept the books, vacuumed and cleaned the place. What else? I was a janitor as well. I did everything. It took 6 people to replace me. But I also ran myself into the ground doing that. That was a bit much. So after that, I kind of left the West Coast and moved to the East Coast. And I was on the East Coast for 27 years. Centered around Washington, D.C., and I commuted up to New York at least once a week, probably twice a week, often.
Okay.
Yeah, so I spent half of my time in New York about. I loved New York City, it was great. And Owen James, who was, he's still with us, bless him. And Owen James had rented a big apartment on the Upper West Side. It had 4 bedrooms that were large enough to do structural integration in, and it became a structural integration apartment. He wasn't there. He just rented it, and it was, I think he had it for 50 years or something like that. Long, long time he had this apartment. And that meant that if you were a structural integration practitioner and you came to New York City, you could stay overnight there for $10. I mean, really? New York is not $10. You could stay in that apartment for $10. You could schedule your sessions in that apartment. All you had to do is write them on the wall. Like, I'm taking this session and this session and this session. Everybody would honor it. So you had a place to work, you had a place to stay. And then my friend Rosemary put me up often. So we hung out a lot together, Rosemary Fidus. So she and I spent a lot of time together in New York. She was a wonderful person. About my best friend ever. Great, great person. Anyway, so I spent a lot of time in New York. I loved it there. Can't afford to live there, but it was great. So that was fun.
What happened with the scar? You had an...
I worked on the lady that became our receptionist in the office, and she had
New York?
No, not in New York. This was in Maryland. I was in Maryland, based in Maryland. Oh, that's before. That's when it's... No, she was in California. Wait a minute, I got this all confused. So when I worked on the lady, we were in Monterey, California. We had an office, and Hector had that office until he retired from medicine, which wasn't that long ago. And that lady wanted to work. She wanted to work. She saw people limping in and walking out. She says, "How about me?" And I looked at her and said, "Do you have a problem?" She says, "Yes, I can't fold my knee." I hadn't noticed. I wasn't looking. I don't look at people for structure unless I'm asked, or unless it's a very unusual. Then I'll take a peek. But if I'm not invited, I don't look. Right? I just keep that to myself, right? So I'm not working, you know, I'm not working. I'm not going to be analyzing structure. I don't do that. Anyway, so she wanted work. So I started the sessions. The third session is where her scar was. It was about 8 inches long, about on the side of the leg, and they'd gone in 5 times through the same incision. It was massive incision. Either side of that incision had ripples in the flesh, and it was like rolling hills. Red streaks, white streaks. It was all blotchy and weird on both sides. And then the incision was as deep as my finger is thick. I could put my finger into it and look across, and you almost couldn't see it. It was a squared off incision like that. Very strange thing. Came down and was square. So there she was, and I thought, oh gosh, you know, I got the other leg to track forward and back at the knee straight. I'm trying the other one on that, and I can't get it. I just can't do it. Because the scar is the problem. It wasn't that the structure inside was the problem. The scar had it all glued together, and I didn't know what to do with the scar. So I asked her, I said, you know, that scar seems to be the trouble. You think I could do a little something with it? She said, oh, be my guest, right? You know what she cared. I said, well, you got to tell me if you're miserable, if this hurts. So I start just fooling around with it, just make it a little softer, because maybe if I can get that scar a little softer, I can get structural integration in there. That's what I'm thinking, right? So I start working on this thing. I must have worked 15 minutes. I mean, I think it's the best session I ever gave, because I didn't know what I was doing. So I went up in there, and I can't even see. I couldn't even see the scar. It was on the leg, and it was to the side, and I'm just doing stuff. And I said, does this hurt? She says, oh, not at all. I said, well, it's changing a little bit. Great. Okay, we'll just keep doing this for a while. And we started talking about movies. I was going out to see a show later that day, and I didn't want to waste my money. So I was asking her what was good in the movies. I went downtown. There's 4 or 5 choices to go to. And so we're talking about various things, talking about Marilyn Monroe and all this stuff, how much we admired her and all. She had a great sense of humor.
And you let your hands go?
Yeah, I wasn't paying any attention. I just let them fly and do these things, and they were doing all these little light, little weird little things. I wasn't paying any attention. I didn't think I was doing anything. And then, from habit, from Dr. Rolf, I stop and I check and see, how am I doing? What am I doing? So I stopped for a minute. I looked at the scar, and I'd only worked on the bottom half. It was about this long. I only worked about halfway up. That's all I'd done. I hadn't done the whole thing at once. I'd only done half of it. And I looked, and I went, really? It had closed. That big gap had gone together, so the square stuff was gone. All the ripples in the side were smooth and pliant. The color was the right color, and that shiny, slick surface had hair on it. Little tiny hairs, you know, the little fuzzy stuff we've got. The hair came back. Well, I'd like to know where it was hiding. Why did it come back? I still don't know the answer to that, but it does come back. So I looked at that, and I was stunned, and I said, for heaven's sakes. And she couldn't feel anything, and now she could. The nerve came back. I'm going, what the heck? I said, I said, sit up and take a look at this leg. And she sat up, and she looked at it, and she says, I didn't know you could do that. And I said, me neither. Yeah. Whoa. So I thought, well, that was interesting. So the next time I got a scar, I said, can I work on your scar? And, you know, that kind of stuff. But, you know, the first scar, I'd only done half of it. I didn't remember anything I'd done. Not a bit of it. My mind was completely blank. But
what I'm interested in is, have you realized it has something to do with the fascia?
It was fascia. To me,
yeah, I know, but
a scar is pure fascia.
Yeah, but did you realize that in that moment?
Yeah. Because I'm trained to work on fascia. Dr. Rolf has work on fascia. Scars are a particular type of fascia. Yeah. They don't respond to deep pressure. You can't get through them. They fight you. And not that people fight you from here, but the tissue fights you. So you can't be rough on them. You can't push. You don't get much. You tear them. You can damage tissue, and maybe it's a little looser later. But, you know, the lighter touch, it just puts it all together. It just liberates all that stuff that's just simply stuck together, and it becomes sheets and wonderful pieces of tissue, and it functions beautifully. If you're nice to it, it functions. And I don't like being mean to people. So for me, it was really heaven to be able to be really nice and create such lovely change.
In the second session, you make up your mind what you're doing.
Well, the first session I did it, and then somebody else came along. I only did that scar one time. I didn't have to work on it a second time. It wasn't in the way of anything. And it stayed nice. I think she's still alive. I'm not sure. But last time I checked with Hector, which was 2 years ago, he was still alive. She was still alive, and she was still very happy. And it was still okay. So that's a long time, you know. So yeah, it was wonderful to see that that happened. And I'd asked Dr. Rolf, what do you do about scars? And she said, you ignore them and establish the function. But when the trouble with the function is the scar, you can't. And that was this particular scar. The scar was the problem.
You can't ignore it.
No, I couldn't ignore it. I had to do something. And I just was lucky. My hands knew what to do. My head didn't know what to do. I would have gone down the same path everybody else goes down. You need to tear it apart because it's all stuck together. You have to separate it. You have to be mean. You have to, it's gonna hurt, but it'll be better kind of thing. The whole business that's going on all over the place for scars, that's primarily the major treatment, is to be, well, rough on it.
So the whole knowledge about that was once again in the 2007 on the Fascia Congress?
Well, that was when I did this particular thing. It was probably 1973. I think it was 73, because by 74 I was on the East Coast. I moved to the East Coast in 74. So she was probably in 1973. And I kept working on scars because it was interesting. I didn't say anything about it because I had seen in Carmel on the window of a massage therapist who was doing really well and had gold leaf on her window. She must have been doing really good. It said, work on scars, right? You know, that kind of thing. And I thought, oh, they know how to do that. Isn't that cool? I never went to massage school, except at Esalen, right? You know, and I thought, they know how to do that. I wonder what they do. You know, but I didn't want to go to school to find out because I was busy with my life. I had 2 kids I was raising, you know, all this stuff. I didn't have time to do anything like that. So I never questioned whether or not they knew anything. I just figured they knew how. And so I said, good job, Sharon. Gave myself a little pat on the back, right? You know, you figured it out by yourself. Cool. All right, let's just keep going. So every time there was a scar that came around, I went, and nobody ever said, no, you can't touch it, except for one person. And that was a ritual that they had done that meant something. It was a religious ritual, that sun ceremony that they do with the Native American people. They'd done that to their chest, and I wasn't allowed to touch that because that was a religious thing for them. But beyond that, I was begging people, can I work on that? Can I, you know? So I learned things bit by bit by bit. But I did think everybody knew, and I didn't say anything about it. But I got a reputation for it because people would come to me and I'd include the scar and they'd go back and she worked with scars and she did this, and they say it to other people. So the Rolfers kept asking me, and one day I said, well, I'll just write it down. He's on the other side of the country. I can't show him. And we didn't have video back and forth. WhatsApp was not around. Your phone was not a picture. You know, it was a phone.
And Mark Zuckerberg wasn't so.
No, they didn't have any of that. So you couldn't just, oh, take a picture. This is what you do. You know, no, none of that. So here he was on the other side of the country and not likely to see me. So I wrote out a bunch of stuff. And it sounded so stupid, I almost erased it. Because I thought, oh, that sounds really dumb. But I don't know how else to say it. So hit send, right, you know. And he got this little instruction. And he said, it worked. Thanks. And I said, really? You picked up how to do the work with scars from words on a piece of paper? That's interesting. So I decided at that point that I would write something up about scars and let my colleagues know that I'd found something and maybe they were interested, right, you know? All right, so I did. I published it. And it's in the archives someplace. On Scar Tissue, I think it's called. And I published that and let it go. And I thought, I actually wrote it because I assumed that everybody had been to massage school and gotten these classes and stuff, and I said, I'll trade you. Trade you for what you know. I'll give you mine, you give me yours, and that way everybody's got more. I figured that was a fair trade, right, you know? Nobody was willing to trade, but a couple of them wanted classes, and then I started giving classes, very small to start with, 5 people to start with, and it spread from there. And people started asking me more and more and more, how do you do this and stuff like that. Then we had '07, this was '05. '07 we had the first Fascia Research Congress. And Tom Findlay used to be my brother's best friend at Reed College when they went to college together. And I thought, after I learned Rolfing in 1970, I thought to myself, couldn't it be really cool to see who walks through the door, but I can take this on the road. Who do I want to work on? My brother. Ha-ha. So I cornered him at Reed College over Christmas that year in 1970. And I said, I have the best present in the world for you, but I got to come stay with you for about 6 weeks. Is that okay? So yeah, it was. And he says, as long as you're here, why don't you work on my best friend and his wife? And that was Tom Findlay and his wife. So I worked on Tom and my brother and the wives, you know, that kind of thing. And that was a wonderful time. And from there, I went forward. But my brother absolutely loved it and wanted to become a Rolfer, which my mother was very unhappy because he was on a science track. And my mom figured I ruined his life. But he doesn't. My brother's very happy about that. But anyway, so I worked with my brother and Tom Findlay. And so Tom Findlay, when he started the Fascia Research Congress, he told me about it. And I said, I'm coming. I'm coming to the conference. And so there he was, and it was a fantastic success. Yeah, 900 people. My God, it was huge. We did it at Harvard, and we had the main auditorium, but we overflowed 3 times with 900 people, where there were like several conference rooms where you couldn't be. I got to be in the main one and see it because I'd signed up, but there were people that came in later that had to go to a room where there's a big screen where you get to see it, but you didn't see it in person. It was a fantastic event, it really was. And there's Tom he's sitting with his arms folded and he's just grinning from ear to ear, watching this massive herd of people filter by, you know. And you had the suits and polyester suits, you know. Researchers don't make any money, they got polyester suits. You watch the polyester suits walking around, and then all these women in yoga pants and stuff and bright colors, and who are they? The massage people. And they're, you know, the researchers are kind of like stepping back like, are they contagious, you know? It was really funny. So, but a lot of the people that came were not researchers. There were all kinds of people. It just appealed to so many people. Tom was floored. He was absolutely enchanted with the whole business. And I saw him smiling, sitting against the wall, and I kind of cut out of the line. I went up next to him, and I stood with him for a while watching this flow of people. I said, nice party you threw. He goes, you have no idea. I said, so, tell me. And he says, well, when you do these conferences, you get an idea, and you go, okay. And then you write to everybody in the field, hoping that one of the big people will go, I'll be your keynote speaker, you know? So he did this, and he said, everybody he wrote to said yes. He went, whoa, whoa. And then he invited people, right, to come in. And he was expecting 200 people. You might get 200 people at one of these events. And that makes it so that it'll go financially. 900 people? That's outrageous. He was floored, absolutely floored. He says, it's an idea whose time has come. You know, this fascia stuff. So that was the first conference. Yeah, it was an amazing, amazing event. And this is when Jean-Claude Guimberteau showed up with his pictures of the living tissue and stuff like that. And he was so funny. He's very tall and has this adorable little wax mustache. It's all wax and cute at the end. And he's very tall and he was kind of like a stork walking around. He didn't know what to do. He's carrying this briefcase. I kept saying, who is that guy? He kept walking by because he's in a 3-piece wool suit and it's 80 degrees outside. And I figured he's got to be miserable. You know, you could tell he's not from America too. So I'm wondering, who is he? And Laurie Giles, my friend Laurie, she didn't buy a ticket to the Fascia Research Society. They weren't selling anymore. So she said she had to get in. So she says, I'll help at the front desk. They said, done. So she got in. So she's there at the front desk. And she said, Jean-Claude came up to her and says, I have something. And she says, what? He says, I will show you. And he opens up, and here's this living, and she says, she snapped the thing shut, put it under her arm, grabbed and says, come with me, and ran to find Tom. And that afternoon at lunch, they showed these wonderful videos he had, and it was instant, incredible success. And then he's gone on to make so many more, and he's a major star in the fascia world because of this. But he was just starting out in 07. And I asked Tom, I said, I have something. How do I get it in? Because I'm thinking of the scar tissue work and maybe bone work by then, because I was thinking about bone work. And I said, I have something to give here. How do I do this? He says, well, you know, you have to get papers, you have to get this, you have to get that, you have to do science and all this. And I said, so how do you do science? He says, I have written papers about how to do science. So I go and I read how to do science, and most of it's over my head and not possible. But I can do the first thing, which is a search of the literature. Why do you do that? So if somebody else has done what you've done, and you've got this great idea, great ideas emerge in the world, different places at the same time sometimes. So if you've got that idea, but maybe somebody else has, and if somebody else has, why bother? Because it's being done. So that was the idea. You look and see if anybody else has got what you've got. So when I got home from Fascia Research Society, I finally could use a computer by then, and I opened it up and I said, scar tissue, work on scar tissue, who's doing it? And there wasn't anybody. It was zero, just about. There were a couple people in Utah who were doing some sort of massage around the general pelvis for helping of reproductive stuff, because women weren't going to be getting pregnant. Maybe they did massage in the belly and stuff, but it wasn't anything specific. It was just kind of massage, you know? Maybe that, and I thought, well, that's interesting. There doesn't seem to anybody knows this. And I thought, dear God, I'd better get going, because I do know something. And so that's when I started teaching for real, outside of the Rolfers, outside of structural integration. I started opening the doors, taking anybody that was interested, you know, because you don't need to know structural integration to do scar work. I started teaching, and I got more and more people. And it's such wonderful work, you know, I'm lucky. Because if it was lousy work, I wouldn't have been able to go forward. But it's such lovely work that I teach it, I still teach it. I love the class, I love the work. It's wonderful stuff. Doesn't hurt, and it's good for everything except for hypertrophic scars. We're not so good with it, but we're on it. We're working. We're getting there.
We're getting there. We're getting there.
We're going to do it. We'll figure it out. I have faith, because we're crowdsourcing it now. Yeah, and I haven't dreamed up every technique. There are people who are able to figure things out as well. So we are now adding to the center of things that we can do. We're hoping to form a community of people who are generous enough to not keep things for themselves, you know, but to pass these things on. In my heart, I believe that this work should be given to everybody on this planet. Because everybody gets in trouble. Babies get in trouble coming through the birth canal. People they fall down and they cut themselves. I mean, it's dreadful stuff, right? And there's surgical operations everywhere. So you can help all these people be comfortable, better, have everything function again. That's a gift, right? And I decided that I was not going to trademark it, keep it for myself, make a ton of money, you know, and keep it back, because that would mean people wouldn't get it. That there would be places in this world it couldn't go, right? Because they don't have any money to get it. And that's not okay. This shouldn't be about money. This should be about people and helping people. If you've got something that helps people that much, you've got to share it. You can't keep it to yourself. It's criminal to keep it to yourself and keep all that, you know? What for? You know? We're all out of here. You don't take it with you. Who cares, right? You know? I've got enough to live. I'm good. You know? And that way I can just give it to people who are interested. And I've found such wonderful people like Yanni, Wojtek, you know, Wolfgang, Heike, all these people who are interested, who love this work too. And with them, we're going to be able to do it. I can't do it by myself.
But with them, we can take it and we can give it to everybody.